What is up, guys, and welcome back to Above the Middle, the place where we talk about all things personal development with me, Joe Gibson. Now, did you know that your brain is literally conditioned to think more negatively than positively? This is called the negative bias, and that is what we are going to talk about today. So a really long time ago, our brains had to make sure that we were focusing on the negative things in our life to keep us safe. Because back then, there was a ton of physical threats. And we had to be aware of this so that we would not get ourselves into negative situations, or if negative situations arise, that we would focus on them, think about them a lot, so that we could get ourselves out of those situations. Because obviously, when there is a tiger in front of you, you do not want to spend your time thinking about the lovely meal you have. You want to think about that tiger so that you don't get eaten. So where does this apply in the 21st century? So obviously we don't have these major threats to us, but our brains still work in the same way. So we're going through our daily lives being much more aware of the negative things that are happening to us, and not only that, but spending way more time thinking about these things. Not because they hold any actual significance or that they really are that bad. Our brains are just wired to think about those things more. So let's think of some examples. So I don't know, maybe you're having a fine day in work and everything's going all right, and then one of your co-workers make a little comment and it really annoys you, and for the rest of your day you're just thinking about that one thing, and it wasn't really that big of a deal, but in your head it is. So then you go home and you're speaking to your flatmate and you say, I had an awful day. And they're like, why? And you're like, well, my co-worker said this one thing. And you completely forgot about the rest of the day, which was fine. There was just that one thing that went wrong, and now all of a sudden your day's ruined. Because your brain will hyper-focus onto that negative thing and make a big deal out of it, even though it's probably not that big of a deal. It's why so many of us remember It's why so many of us will remember negative experiences so much stronger than positive ones, while we'll spend a really long time thinking about that horrible breakup. Why we'll remember one embarrassing moment from years ago, which people who were there probably don't even remember, but we do because it was so bad and we're like, oh, it's awful. Our brains just have a tendency to focus on the negatives so much more than the positives. And there's scientific evidence to back this up. In one experiment they showed negative pictures versus positive pictures, and there was actually more neural activity in the brain to do with the negative pictures rather than the positive ones, because our brain will just focus on those negatives. Another one as well, so the amygdala, which is your fear-based response system in the brain, 2/3 of the neurons in that part of your brain will actually react to negative experiences compared to positive ones. This is significant because your amygdala is hooked up to hippocampus, which is the memory center. So you're going to have a bad experience and this amygdala is going to fire off with more intensity than it would for a positive one, and it's going to store that memory really quickly and say, that was a bad experience, we need to remember that, we need to think about it. And also it takes much longer for the brain to even store positive memories. So not only is your brain not reacting that strongly to positive things, it's also not remembering the positive things that happen. So you're in this juxtaposition then, where you can't even recall the positive things that are happening to you as well as you can the negative things. So that's where our brain's at. So how do we get ourselves out of this? So number one is just developing your mindfulness. So I'll always come back to mindfulness. If you want to work around any sort of behavior that you want to change, first thing is just becoming aware of it. So anytime you feel like you're ruminating and just thinking over this negative experience, just become mindful of it. When we bring these things to the consciousness, when you bring these things to awareness, that's when you can stop then. If we're just running on autopilot, we're just letting our brain think over this bad thing over and over and over again, we can't stop it then. As long as you can become aware of it, that's where we can start to change the behavior. So that's number one. Number two, reframe the situation. So when your brain is telling you that you have had an awful day because of one little thing, because your shower wasn't running hot or whatever the reason might be, just think to yourself, has today actually been that bad? Am I just ruminating on this one little thing? Do I need to let this ruin my mood? Probably not. If it's not that big of a deal, you shouldn't let it ruin the rest of your day. That is just a fact. So just reframe the situation. Think about your day as a whole. Do I need to be moody for the rest of the day now because one little thing happened? Have I had good things happen today? Have I been feeling okay today? Just check in on yourself. Don't let yourself be pulled down because your brain just has a little tendency to think about negative things more than the positive things. Number three, establish new patterns. So when a negative thing happens, your automatic response might be to ruminate over it and think about it and react suddenly to it. Instead of ruminating and ruining your day over it, just engage in a bit of self-care. Get yourself out of the situation. Go for a walk, watch a TV show, listen to some music that's going to lift your mood. Get yourself out of your head for a second. Don't engage in that negative self-talk. And this always comes back to this. When we engage with that negative chatter, when we feed into it, we're literally just feeding a monster. We're just feeding that experience in our head. We're making the issue even bigger, and it will ruin your day. So don't engage in that. Do a bit of meditation, engage in self-care, reframe how you react to those situations. Just because something bad happened doesn't mean you need to spend the next 2 hours ruminating over it and thinking about it. You can acknowledge, oh, that was a bad thing, it doesn't have to ruin my day. Let's just move on. Don't let your brain automatically go into attack mode and ruin your day. And then number 4, remember and savor positive moments. So as I said before, your brain will remember negative things much easier than it will remember positive things. So that means when you are feeling okay and when you're having an alright time in your day, just note that and remember it. Think to yourself, oh, I'm having a good time right now. I'm feeling okay. Nothing bad is happening. When you bring awareness to a moment, that's going to help store that memory. And we have to do this with positive experiences because, as I said before, your brain has a less likelihood of remembering those things, or it doesn't remember those things that well. So the more time you spend thinking about a positive moment, the more likely it's going to be stored in your brain. So that when negative things do come up, you can then remember the positive things that have happened in the day. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'll use an example. If you're in work and you're just minding your business and you're having a fine time, everything's going okay, just take a moment and sit there and be like, I'm having an alright time right now. I'm feeling okay. And when you're thinking about that, your brain's then going to store that memory. There's going to be a higher likelihood of storing that memory, so that when negative things do come up during the day, maybe you won't mull over them so much. You can then remember back to that moment when you were feeling okay. And I think this is where meditation really comes in handy, because meditation allows you to calm down, and it's a lot of time just focusing on the present, focusing in on a peaceful, calm moment. And if you're doing that every day, that is just building up this memory and this experience of something good. So when I'm having a bad time, I just remember that those bad things don't last forever, that there actually are good moments and things that happen and things I can do on a day-to-day basis that make me feel good. So that is number 4, remembering the positive moments, and that's where we're going to leave it today. So just remember that life is full of ups and downs, and we just have a tendency to remember the downs more so than we do the ups. But we can work around that, and you can start today. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Check back next Wednesday for another video. You can check out my blog where I talk about this stuff in a little bit more detail. I will see you next time. Thanks so much.